I had never meant to arrive at the ballroom at that exact moment. My assignment was simple: mop floors after the gala, collect glassware left behind by careless millionaires, and vanish before sunrise. But that night in Madrid, under a velvet sky where the rain had just stopped, I was ushered into the Palacio de las Rosas an hour earlier than scheduled. The concierge had misread the cleaning rota, so I stepped into the golden light of chandeliers, my work gloves still in my bag, just as a toast was being raised. The sound of crystal glasses clinking rang across the marble, polished so bright it reflected every face like a watery mirror. And then, from the stage, a man's voice pierced the air. His tone was sharp, triumphant, rehearsed for scandal. "To the future of Salvatierra Holdings," he declared, untainted by false airs and fraudulent claims. "Tonight, we bury once and for all the whispers that have haunted our family." The words slid through me like bleach on raw skin, biting, corrosive. The ballroom erupted in applause. No one noticed me near the column with my bucket, but my chest tightened. I had not expected to hear anything about heirs or families. I had come for floors, not secrets. Yet that sentence would unfasten everything I thought I knew about myself. I am Camila Ortega, 32 years old. I have scrubbed offices, stairwells, metro stations. My mother, Sophia, worked until her lungs collapsed from disinfectant fumes. I had learned early how to survive in silence, bent over tiles and mirrors, polishing away traces of others. My only inheritance was a stack of unpaid bills and a worn keychain shaped like a silver crescent moon. That keychain was the only clue I ever had about my absent father. But when the millionaire on stage sneered about false heirs, something inside me clicked. I knew without understanding why that his words were tied to me. The Salvatierra empire was an ocean compared to my puddle of existence. Logistics, ports, and shipping routes that carried half the wealth of Spain through their hands. Their patriarch, Don Ernesto, had died 6 months earlier, leaving 3 children: Javier, the eldest son who spoke that night; Isabel, elegant and cold; and Tomas, the youngest, who never appeared in public without his lawyers. Rumors had swirled about a mistress, a hidden child, an inconvenient truth sealed in documents. That was the scandal Javier claimed to bury with champagne. I felt my mop handle grow heavy in my hand, like a gavel. Later, when the hall emptied, I began my work. The marble smelled of spilled cava, the air of cigar smoke and perfume. As I bent to scrub a stubborn stain near the podium, my rag brushed against a folded sheet of paper, wedged under the base of the microphone stand. Moisture had curled its edges. My instinct was to discard it. Instead, I opened it. The letter was short, typed, and unsigned. Camila O., if you wish to know the truth, search the archives of Hospital Del Mar, 1991. Look for the name Salvatierra in the maternity registry. Bring gloves. You will need them. The words were steady, clinical, almost forensic. My breath caught. Who had left this? Who knew my name? I pressed the page into my apron pocket. My heart pounded louder than the echo of my bucket wheels. That night I dreamed of my mother's face, lined with fatigue, whispering again what she had told me once when fever made her careless. Your father wanted to claim you, but his family erased us. When dawn arrived, I took a train to Barcelona. The Hospital Del Mar sat on the shoreline, modern wings fused to an older brick facade. I pretended to be cleaning staff, walking past reception with practiced invisibility. In a storage room, behind boxes of gloves and disinfectant, I found what I was searching for. Dusty ledgers bound in green cloth, marked 1991, page after page, mothers' names, infants' weights, signatures of attending doctors. My eyes blurred. Then I found it. Ortega, Sophia. Infant, Camila. Father, Salvatierra Ernesto. But the line of the father's name had been struck through with heavy ink, the letters barely visible under obliteration. In the margin, a note. Record amended by legal order. See file ref. 772A. My knees buckled. The floor smelled of mildew, sharp as bleach. My name was there, entangled with theirs, but buried under deliberate strokes. I copied the page with my phone. My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped it into the mop bucket nearby. That bucket, full of cloudy water, seemed to mock me dirty, yet necessary, like the truth itself. The next weeks blurred into nights of work and stolen hours of search. In archives, I uncovered fragments. A notarized draft of a will mentioning the child born of Sofia Ortega to be recognized. A photo of my mother, young and unsmiling, standing near Ernesto at a logistics conference, her gaze lowered as if erasure had already begun. And an official receipt of payment large sums sent monthly to a bank account under her name until I turned 3. Every piece burned into me like disinfectant on open skin. Clear, stinging, undeniable. Yet evidence alone was not enough. The Salvatierras lived in a fortress of denial, protected by lawyers and mirrors polished to blind onlookers. I would need to confront them where their voices echoed loudest. The chance came on a wet afternoon in November. Salvatierra Holdings announced a press conference in Madrid's mirrored atrium, unveiling a new international port acquisition. Reporters, investors, dignitaries would gather under the glass dome. It would be, I realized, the perfect stage for revelation. I arrived in uniform, pushing my cart of supplies. Security waved me through without question. Invisible people always pass. The floor gleamed with wax I had applied myself the week before, each reflection like a witness. When the conference began, Javier once again took the podium. His suit was steel gray, his smile sharper. He spoke of power, expansion, the family legacy. Cameras clicked. The world listened. And I stepped forward. My gloves were still damp from bleach. In one hand, I carried the copied hospital record. In the other, the notarized draft of the will. My voice trembled but carried. Before you celebrate legacies, you should acknowledge lives erased. The atrium hushed. 100 faces turned. Reporters leaned forward. Javier's eyes narrowed. Fury coiled behind his practiced calm. Remove her, he ordered, but I held up the papers. This is the maternity record. This is Ernesto Salvatierra's will. Both name me. I am his daughter. I am not a whisper to be buried. Gasps rippled. Cameras flashed. For the first time in years, my reflection in the waxed floor looked back at me not as a cleaner, but as someone undeniable. Isabel rose from the front row, her pearls trembling. Forgery, she hissed. Then let a notary read them, I said. My voice was steadier now, like a mop pressed firmly against dirt. One of the journalists, skeptical yet hungry, seized the documents from my hand and read aloud. His words were formal, clipped, Hospital Del Mar Registry, 1991. Father, Ernesto Salvatierra. Amended by legal order. Draft will. Provision for recognition of child. Camila Ortega. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Javier's fists clenched. These are tricks, lies. We settled this years ago. But I saw the truth in his tightened jaw. He knew. They all knew. Only the mirrors of wealth had hidden it. A notary, present for the acquisition signing, stepped forward hesitantly. I can authenticate the signatures, he said. If permitted. The room fractured into noise. Security hesitated, unwilling to drag me out under so many cameras. I stood rooted, my bucket and mop beside me like loyal companions. The smell of bleach clung to my skin. For once I was not cleaning their mess. I was uncovering it. The silence that followed was not silence at all, but the buzzing of whispers, The hum of cameras adjusting, the scraping of chairs as investors shifted uneasily. It felt like the world inhaled and held its breath. I had become visible, and visibility was dangerous. Javier's smile strained as he tried to steady himself at the podium. "This is absurd," he said, but the microphone betrayed him. The tremor in his voice carried across the atrium. Some janitor claiming to be family, disrupting an international signing. Do you all not see the spectacle? His words were meant to dismiss me, but the cruelty in them only sharpened the moment. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. Even those accustomed to elite arrogance recognized when contempt went too far. I removed my gloves slowly, deliberately, as though shedding a disguise. I am not claiming. I am proving. The will, the registry, the payments. Documents do not mop themselves away. A journalist near the front raised her recorder. "Can we see the receipts you mentioned?" My hands shook, but I opened the folder hidden under rags in my cart. The yellowed bank slips, stamped and signed, fluttered like ghosts. Monthly deposits to Sofia Ortega from Salvatierra accounts. Until the year I turned 3. After that, nothing. She was discarded as though bleach could erase blood. Gasps again. Someone murmured, "Too precise to be fabricated." The notary accepted the slips, his brow furrowed as he examined them under the fluorescent lights. "These stamps are authentic. These transfers originated from Salvatierra Holdings." Javier's sister Isabel stood, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Even if true, what does it matter? Children of mistakes do not inherit empires. We guard our name, our legitimacy, our dignity." Her words landed like blows. But I had polished mirrors too long, not to know how dignity can be manufactured. "Your dignity rests on lies," I said, my tone measured, almost forensic. "You speak of legitimacy while you deny what is written in your own father's hand." The atrium grew heavy with tension. Cameras clicked faster. For the first time, I felt the weight of light, not as something distant, but as something burning directly onto my skin. Security hovered, waiting for a command. But no order came. Removing me now would be a spectacle greater than my presence. Javier's jaw tightened. He knew it. The notary cleared his throat, voice taut. "We cannot ignore these documents. They require examination by the board, perhaps even a tribunal. To dismiss them outright would be to dismiss legality itself." That sentence was the crack in their fortress. I lowered my gaze to the polished floor. My reflection wavered, distorted by wax, yet undeniable. I thought of my mother scrubbing other people's kitchens with bare hands because gloves tore too quickly. I thought of her silence. And I thought of bleach, how it whitens, but never truly purifies. It only hides the stains from sight. That night, my life turned. I became not just Camila Ortega, cleaner, but Camila Ortega, the name in headlines. Possible hidden heir confronts Salvatierra dynasty in public. Some wrote I was courageous. Others called me delusional. I endured photos taken while leaving my modest apartment, microphones shoved toward me on buses, gossip spilling across morning talk shows. Every word twisted, every angle exaggerated. I felt as though I were living in someone else's reflection. But the documents were undeniable. Lawyers contacted me. Some offered representation for money I didn't have. One, a quiet man named Luis Herrera, offered to work on contingency. "I believe in what you've shown," he said. His voice was careful, minimal, almost tense, as though every syllable were weighed. "But belief is not enough. We need certainties." So we pursued DNA. The Salvatierras resisted, of course. They called it harassment, manipulation, theater. Yet the court, under pressure from public scrutiny, granted the petition. A sealed sample from Ernesto's medical records was compared against mine. Weeks stretched like years, the smell of disinfectant always in my nostrils as I continued working night shifts to pay rent. Visibility had not given me wealth. It had only deepened my poverty. When the results arrived, Luis unfolded the document with steady hands. Probability of paternity, 99.8%. I could not breathe. The paper blurred in my vision. My life had been lived in shadows, yet here was light, blinding, irrefutable. But truth alone does not topple empires. The Salvatiras issued statements denying validity, questioning chain of custody, calling the courts biased. They sought to suffocate me under legal jargon. Still, the tide had shifted. An extraordinary board meeting was announced, to be held in the ballroom of the Madrid Stock Exchange, with journalists present, to address the Ortega claims, as they called them. That ballroom, with its high mirrored ceiling and velvet drapes, would become the stage for my final confrontation. The night before, I could not sleep. I laid out my cleaning gloves on the table, the ones stiff with bleach residue, and stared at them as if they were relics. They had shielded me from filth, but also from touch. They were the boundary between my life and theirs. When I entered the ballroom, rows of investors sat like judges. The Salvatiras occupied the front, armored in tailored suits. I carried no armor, only papers and my voice. The chair of the board, a solemn woman with gray hair, opened the session. We will hear evidence and testimony. Let us proceed with dignity. Dignity. The word echoed like a challenge. Luis presented the documents, the hospital registry, the draft will, the receipts, the DNA. Each was read aloud, notarized, stamped. Formal language filled the air. Authenticated. Probability. Legal amendment. My life reduced to forensic fragments, yet each fragment undeniable. When my turn came, I stood. My palms were raw. I am not here to strip you of wealth. I am here to reclaim what was erased. My mother scrubbed floors until her breath failed. She carried silence so that you could carry pearls. You speak of mistakes, but I am not a mistake. I am proof that bleach cannot remove what is written in blood. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Javier rose, his face pale with fury. If we recognize her, we dismantle everything. Our investors will flee. Our legacy will crumble. She is nothing but a cleaner. The word struck like a slap, but I steadied myself. Yes, I said softly. I clean. I know what it is to remove filth. And I know when dirt is hidden under polish. You fear me because I remind you of the stains beneath your empire. The ballroom shifted. Investors whispered. Some nodded. The chair cleared her throat. The documents are conclusive. The DNA is conclusive. By all legal measure, Camila Ortega is recognized as the daughter of Ernesto Salvatierra. The words fell like water over scorched earth. Javier's protest drowned in the murmurs rising around him. Isabel covered her face with gloved hands. Tomas stared at me as though I were a reflection he could not escape. Reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed. My knees trembled, but I stood rooted on the polished floor, bucket and mop still beside me. The scent of bleach clone, but it no longer felt like disguise. It felt like truth. Later, outside, the sky was heavy with rain. A journalist thrust a microphone toward me. What will you do now that you have recognition? Will you claim the fortune? I paused, feeling the weight of the keychain in my pocket, the silver crescent moon my mother had left me. My inheritance was not money. It was dignity. I will not take what is not mine to live on, I said. But I will not let them erase my name again. My mother's silence ends with me. That is enough. And for the first time, it was. Recognition changed nothing and everything. The day after the board's ruling, I returned to my shift at the office towers near Gran Via. The managers looked at me differently, some with pity, some with fear, some with a shallow respect, but still handed me the mop and bucket. The tiles did not polish themselves, and bills did not wait for miracles. I remained who I had always been, a woman who bent her back over other people's footprints. But inside, something had shifted, subtle as the scent of disinfectant lingering in an empty corridor. For the first time, I knew my name could not be scrubbed away. The Salvatierras withdrew into their fortress. Statements were issued, carefully worded, designed to minimize scandal. They spoke of respecting the court's findings while emphasizing the need for family unity. But their faces in photographs were stiff, brittle. For a dynasty that had built itself on appearances, mirrors now reflected cracks they could not polish over. I thought often of my mother. How she would have wept, not for money, but for truth made public. In the stillness of night shifts, I sometimes whispered to her ghost, "It is done. They cannot erase me anymore." And yet, the world did not stop asking. Would I demand my share? Would I press for inheritance, stake a claim in the ports, the ships, the accounts? The lawyers encouraged it. Luis, patient and measured, reminded me, legally, you are entitled. Ernesto's recognition of you in his draft will, coupled with the DNA, creates standing. You could live without worry ever again. But worry was stitched into me like bleach stains on old clothes. I knew wealth could corrupt as much as denial. My mother had raised me with calloused hands, teaching me dignity and survival, not entitlement. To seize their empire would be to become what I despised. So I asked for something else. At the next press appearance, this time in a modest municipal hall, where officials confirmed my legal recognition, I spoke clearly, slowly, so that no one could twist my words. I do not want their fortune. I want one thing only, a foundation in my mother's name to protect the invisible workers who polish their marble, wash their linens, guard their gates. A fund, not for me, but for them. Let that be my inheritance. The room fell quiet. Some smirked, thinking me naive. But others, workers, journalists, women with tired eyes, clapped softly. The sound grew. Javier scowled, but he could not oppose it without appearing crueler than he already had. The board, cornered by public opinion, announced they would honor my request. A modest fraction of their fortune, redirected, was insignificant to them. But to us, it was life. Weeks later, I stood in the atrium of a community center, watching as the first grants were given to cleaners, janitors, caretakers. Gloves, health insurance, scholarships for their children. The scent of disinfectant hung in the air, but this time it was not suffocating. It was liberating. Still, shadows lingered. Reporters thrived on tension, and the Salvatierras on silence. I knew they resented me, not for money, but for forcing mirrors onto their faces. Whenever I passed their headquarters, I felt the weight of eyes behind tinted glass. But fear no longer ruled me. The final confrontation came not in a ballroom or boardroom, but in a church. A memorial mass for Ernesto, on the anniversary of his death, drew politicians, magnates, and the faithful alike. I attended quietly, sitting in the back pew, dressed simply. When communion ended, the priest spoke of legacy. His words flowed like incense, heavy with praise for the Salvatierra patriarch. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "And let us not forget that legacy is not only in wealth, but in truth. Let all children be recognized as God intended." Murmurs filled the pews. I felt heat rise to my face. Suddenly, Javier turned from the front row, his gaze locking on me. For the first time, he did not look furious. He looked tired. He rose, walked down the aisle, and stopped before me. Cameras clicked discreetly, though the church was meant to be sacred. "You should not be here," he whispered. "I was invited by truth," I answered. He hesitated. The mask of arrogance cracked, if only slightly. "You destroyed us." I met his eyes. "No, I revealed you." "You destroyed yourselves." His jaw clenched, but he said no more. He returned to his pew. The service continued. But everyone had seen. The acknowledgment, however bitter, had been made in public. Afterward, as people spilled out into the plaza, a woman approached me. Her uniform was familiar, navy smock, gloves tucked into the waistband. She was a cleaner for the church. She pressed my hand. For us, you gave voice. We thank you. Her words meant more than any fortune. From then on, I lived in two worlds. The world of marble and glare, which still whispered about me, and the world of tiled corridors, echoing with the sound of buckets and mops, where I belonged. The foundation grew. Scholarships were awarded. Clinics opened. Workers walked with straighter backs. My name was written not only in courts, but in lives changed. That was wealth. Sometimes, late at night, I touched the silver crescent moon keychain. Its edges had dulled, but its meaning had sharpened. I understood now. It was never proof of possession. It was proof of survival. Years later, when journalists asked me to sum up my journey, I spoke carefully, my tone restrained but resolute. I was not bleach that erased. I was a mirror that revealed. Wealth may polish surfaces, but dignity shines through the cracks. The story of the solitaires faded into archives, but the foundation remained. And I, still walking the line between invisibility and recognition, carried my mop and gloves not as symbols of shame, but as emblems of truth. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance is not gold or marble, but the unyielding right to be seen.